Hey everybody, welcome back to the next episode. And today we have Mike Hill with us from One Planet Pizza. One Planet Pizza is fully plant-based, so I'm very excited to talk about this subject, about this business, something that of course we so much believe in. So welcome, Mike.
Afternoon, Shane. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm great. Afternoon for you, morning for me.
Morning for you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you got to, how you and your son decided to do this type of business and why, and give us a bit of the Cliff Notes backstory on it.
Yeah, sure. I guess it all starts back from my journey into veganism. I turned vegetarian when I was 16, many years ago.
So what was that, like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the benefits of a healthy plant-based diet. No,
totally.
do more than that. In fact, I've been vegan almost 40 years. Next year, it will be 40 years. So I turned vegetarian when I was 15, 16, principally through an interest in Buddhism, actually, but also always been interested in my health and fitness. I went to Loughborough University over here in the UK. It's the leading sports and physical education university. I was really into my running, a few other sports. Shared a flat with someone who had just turned vegan, international sprinter, telling me about the advantages from a health and performance point of view of going plant-based.
Right.
And so I decided we were in self-catering, had our own kitchen. So I started joining in with him, making all these amazing vegan meals. And I never really looked back. So over a varied business career, I always wanted to end up running a plant-based business specifically. And about 6 years ago, my son graduated from his degree course and was wondering what to do. He was actually doing care, social work at that time, but he turned vegan as well. The family's always loved pizzas. Saturday night was always pizza nights in the Hill household. We used to make our own pizzas from scratch. So it seemed an obvious thing to have a look at the frozen pizza market and see if there was a gap there. And this was, as I say, 6 years ago. So we hadn't really seen the growth that we've seen now in terms of plant-based. So it was quite good timing, I think, to start and be the UK's first frozen vegan pizza company.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. We got similar stories. I mean, when I started, 18 years ago or whatever, eating plant-based and doing veganism, for me, it started health-wise. So I was like, okay, health-wise, I was writing books in the space. I had gyms I owned and stuff like that. And then for me, I was always trying to look for more energy and be more productivity, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, and then I started eating a certain way and I'm like, man, I'm getting more energy. Man, I'm not feeling bogged down. Man, I'm feeling good. So I was like, okay, this is working. And then, and then I started to change to, well, to be honest, when you start a compassion movement, anything with the word compassion in it, which is our brand now, one of the major questions I get is, do you eat animals? Do you use products tested on animals, right? Which, compassion goes with that stuff, right? So, so I love your story. Similar, I feel we're kind of similar that way. And I agree. I love the fact of, you guys are, plant-based is just really, kind of hitting that mark now. And then, so tell us, that's amazing. So, you had the family, we were making it at home and stuff like that. And then when you decided to turn it into a business, how did that come about? What was the makings of that? Did you start seeing okay, how do we make these pizzas? How do we get them to market?
Luckily, I had a part share in a veggie vegan restaurant at the time. So we had access to a good kitchen, access to quite a few restaurant customers that were interested in the food, some vegan, some veggie, some were flexitarian or reducing their meat or dairy. So we used that. That restaurant was called River Green Cafe, still existence now. I've sold my share in it, but it was a perfect way of testing and trialing these the pizza bases to get the base just how we wanted it, to get the sauce, and then of course the challenge is always the cheese. When I was cooking vegan pizzas for the family, I wouldn't put any cheese on. I'd just go cheeseless because back then the vegan cheese was absolutely awful.
Yeah.
But nowadays there's some pretty good ones, and fairly quickly we managed to find what we think is still the best pizza cheese, best pizza vegan cheese, and because of the taste, the texture, the pullness, the stringiness of it, the way it melts, everything like that. So it took probably 3 iterations of our pizza range over 6 years to get to the stage where we're really happy with it. But to be honest, there's still some way to go, Shane. You know, and in fact, I had a meeting last week with a company that thinks they can improve our base.
Right.
We're not sourdough at the moment, so we're looking at perhaps going sourdough. So it's a continuous process.
Yeah, I think that would be a product, you know, where you're always trying to critique to get it to that exact right stage. Like it's not the simplest product to try and get perfect. You know, you look at a pizza and you think it's simple, but when you really, if you're making it as an entrepreneur, there's almost lots of little details with inside that to get it perfect.
Definitely. I mean, the sauce is classic Italian tomatoes, passata, very, very simple. The base is pretty standard, but with a little twist. And then it's that mixture of finding the best toppings. And some of those toppings are obviously vegetable based, onions, Mediterranean vegetables, pineapple, as we do a Hawaiian, much to the disgust of our Italian followers who never like pineapple on a pizza. But I guess the next challenge after the cheese is where we start using the fake meats, because two in our classic range, Hawaiian and the spicy pepperoni, as we call it, have both got a fake meat. And then it's about finding the best tasting one, but also the best one that cooks very well from frozen in an oven.
Right. Well, I can imagine how many bites of pizza you've probably tested over the last 6 years.
Yeah, an awful lot. Let's put it this way: I don't cook them at home anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine, right? Do you ever watch the guy from America, Barstool guy, Dave Portnoy?
I don't think I have, no.
Oh, Google. He's not a vegetarian, but he has a massive brand, and he started this thing, kind of similar, but he doesn't. He tastes pizzas all over North America. So he goes in and he ranks them. And he always says 1 bite every time, but he does like 7 bites, and then he ranks them, and it's, you know, now everybody watches this stuff and he ranks them
Brilliant.
to 10. Yeah, so it's Greets at Barstool, Dave Portnoy. I think you'll get a kick out of watching us.
Yeah, no, I'll do that. I'll do
that. So what's been you know, the biggest challenge for you guys going into that type of business?
I think the challenges have changed in the early days, because we were really looking at early adopters, and this was before the big growth in plant-based over the last 5 years. The challenge in the early days was getting people just to try it and imagine. They didn't really know what vegetarian or vegan cheese was. Right. So in the early days, it was much more about trying to get non-vegans, because we fairly quickly approached and got the vegans on side, and they love our pizzas and have been big fans ever since. But for us, it was always about making as big an impact as possible. So we wanted not just vegans, but as many people as possible to replace their meat and dairy pizzas with plant-based, because that's how we can use pizza. I sometimes call it using pizza as an agent of change. It's a really popular fast food. If we can make a really good plant-based version of that tastes just as good, then it starts people just thinking about what else they can change in their diet to be healthier, to save more animals, to save the planet as well. So that was the challenge in the early days. I think the challenges now are much more commercial. I mean, and some of this is obviously to do with the macroeconomic stuff that's happening at the moment in terms of Ukraine and cost of living and supplies and everything. But even before that, the challenge to small challenger businesses such as ourselves now is really the big mainstream meat and dairy companies have now jumped on this bandwagon and are producing plant-based burgers, sausages, fish fingers, tuna, and pizzas at large volumes, using their existing factories, their existing distribution and supply chains, and in some cases doing a very good job. It's not always the healthiest, it's not almost the most ethical, but sometimes they produce very tasty products which are very similar to the originals. So I think that's where we and other challenger brands, as we call ourselves, are feeling the squeeze really, now that the big boys have come to the party. In our case, it's brands like Chicago Town, Goodfellas, Dr. Oetker. These are the sort of brands which never had a vegan pizza, but in the last year or two, in their range of 15 or 20, they may now have 1 or 2 vegan pizzas. And they've just got a lot of advantages over us smaller companies, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. You know, they got, you know, like you said, the cost and the consumer and stuff. But I think there's definitely a space. You know, I always kind of have a bit of a. I love the fact that companies are introducing more vegan options because it helps spread the word. But you know, it's all some of it too is almost to me a type of greenwashing. And
Yeah,
you don't really know who's in it for the right reasons. And really, when you look, if you're selling burger on one side and you're selling vegan on the other side, and you're killing animals here and not here,
yeah.
I mean, it's a bit contradictory of what you're selling.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, isn't it? Because you've got massive meat companies now like Tyson investing in plant-based meats. The big chicken companies are investing in, you know, plant-based alternatives. And I suppose the question is, will they eventually, if the plant-based version continues to be more popular and is undoubtedly better from a health point of view and an environment point of view, do they have a medium long-term plan to stop producing meat and go over? For example, do you have Wagamama's over in Canada?
No.
No. Okay, Wagamama's is big in UK and Europe. It's probably the leading Japanese fusion restaurant chain.
Okay.
And they've got an exceptional vegan menu. It's developed over the last 3 years. They've now got a commitment over, I think it's the next 8 years, 2030, to go totally plant-based.
Right.
And at the moment, you know, they have meat and fish and dairy in there.
Yeah.
But they've said, you know, we're going to really focus on the plant-based now, and in 8 years' time, go totally plant-based. I don't hear any of the meat or fish or big dairy companies saying that.
Yeah.
No, and sometimes they introduce the plant-based products at very cheap prices, and you just wonder, are they really making any money on that?
Yeah.
Or are they just, as you say, doing it because we need a vegan sausage, we need a vegan pizza, and it's part of our range. If it doesn't make as much money as the meat and traditional stuff, it doesn't matter really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the problem with a lot of those companies, and I think it does start at the top, and it usually is about, you know, those top people making decisions, and a lot is only about the numbers. So it's not about a higher purpose of changing the planet. I mean, I'd love to be sitting in some of those discussions and see if there's even anything about, you know, a higher purpose to change the planet and stuff. And then, you know, somebody like me would step up and say, okay, but we're killing the planet on this side. So what are we going to do?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so I think, you know, there's so much, so it's so, you know, it's so driven by money, those industries, that I think that my guess would be a lot of them aren't going to change over to, you know, plant-based type of stuff.
No. I think the problem with the meat and dairy industry is that it's so embedded in our society and so intrinsically linked to government and other sources of power. And when there's so much money involved, it's very difficult to get change, isn't it?
It's true. Like one of the girls I just interviewed, she has a big channel on like saving animals and vegan and stuff, and she was a top journalist for the big companies in America, CNN and all of them. She was big, and she said, you know, because she was vegan, she said, you know, anytime she tried to push anything that was healthy and good or do a story around it, there was always pushback because their main sponsors are the dairy industry. So she finally had to quit. She's just, so you know, she actually did some progress. She finally got to do some shows on saving the animals and, you know, and stuff, but she was a real pusher, you know, and it just got to the point where it was like, you're just pushing so much against the big machine, and you're only getting so far. No one's really listening because that's where all their money is coming from. You know, if the dairy industry's giving you, you know, $10 million a year on commercials, you know, that's running your entire business.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think the other thing, the meat and the fish and the dairy industry, they're incredibly well linked into byproducts and you know, the waste products. Or it is incredibly efficient. You know, when they kill animals for meat, then pretty much every part of the body goes into the supply chain somewhere, because we've had hundreds of years of them working on this. So it goes into making glue and chemicals and paint and pesticides and things. So it's actually become, you know, unfortunately, a very efficient economically at the input. We know that the true cost of it isn't accounted for, because if they looked at the total cost of it and included things like emissions and the damage to the environment and biodiversity, obviously it's not. But from the output side of thing, everything is used, from the fish and the meat and the dairy industry. Nothing's wasted at all. So if you change one element of it, then it just has a knock-on impact. And that's why I think there's just so much resistance to change. There's so many, and I think, it's very easy in places like Canada and UK to think, my God, the world's changing, everyone's turning plant-based and meat and dairy consumption is going down. But it's actually going up in the world at the moment. Yeah. We're killing more animals, we're drinking more milk, we're killing more fish, because the bigger companies are doing exactly what they did with tobacco or formula milk and moving away from countries which are saying, well, actually, we don't want so much of this. And they're going to developing countries and pushing their products there. So we've now got issues, haven't we, of developing countries where they had a fairly plant-based diet and it was reasonably healthy and they didn't have much cancer, heart disease and type 2 diabetes. But now, because their diet is changing as they get more affluent, they're introducing all the much more Western-based meat and dairy products, and they're starting to get heart diseases as well.
Wow. It reminds me of one of my friends. She was speaking the other day, and this event, I was listening to her, and she's working a lot in New York, and the mayor of New York is vegan, and so he's trying to change the dynamics a lot, and he's very aggressive.
Yeah.
And this was interesting. The food that they serve in this New York schools, when it comes to meat, it costs about, the meat companies who have got it so low to give to the kids, it's like 30 cents a kid for the meat. Now you got to ask yourself, what quality of food are you feeding your kids at 30 cents of any kind of meat they're getting? That it's the worst of the worst. And then it's trying to figure out, him up there of, okay, well, if we're going to create a more plant-based diet, how do we compete with these numbers? How do we get it down? How can we do this? And that's what they're trying to do right now.
Yeah. And it should be possible, because obviously we know that what do the cattle eat before they are turned into meat? Well, they eat beans and soya and all the stuff that we want to be eating direct, not through animals. And yet, so how can it be more expensive to have a plant-based diet if we're taking out a big chunk of that food production system? So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, there's a lot of subsidies around. That's probably a classic example where they're not making much money on the meat they say to sell to the school kids, but it's worthwhile doing because it's good for publicity, and it also gets them used to eating meat at a young age, doesn't it?
Totally, yeah, exactly. I agree. So where do you guys sell your product?
So at the moment, we're probably about 80% in the UK. Okay. In the early years, it was just independent health stores and grocers, specialty grocers. More recently, we then moved online with a big online supermarket in the UK called Ocado. We were on there for a year or two. And we just launched in our first, we're in Whole Foods actually. We've got some of your Whole Foods stores in London, about 5 of them. So they've had the pizzas for quite some time. Recently, we just launched in Asda, used to be part of Walmart. And that's our first UK supermarket listing. Okay, and then export-wise, we've been pretty fortunate in that we've got about 11 countries where the distribution is growing quite fast now. And probably the most interesting country is actually Iceland, where we've pretty much dominated the market up there. And we're going really after the meat and dairy pizza sector. Pretty much every supermarket has all of our pizzas in. Iceland's a really interesting country because they eat a lot of frozen food, because a lot of the Nordic countries tend to. You may have parts of Canada where they eat a lot of frozen food as well. But they also have a high percentage of vegans. A lot of people, considering the nature of the country and it being so north, they have an amazingly high level of veganism and a lot of interest in plant-based. So yeah, doing very well in Iceland at the moment.
Oh, that's cool. I would have never guessed that.
Very unusual.
Yeah, right. So has it been a challenge to try and get your product into the bigger stores and into the Whole Foods? And has that been a challenge?
Yeah, it's taken a while. Whole Foods hasn't been too hard because our pizza is definitely up towards the premium side of things.
Right.
It's still, it's not a cheap budget pizza. And I suppose in the UK supermarkets, as I said before, the challenge now is where do we fit in? Because most of these stores now have 1 or 2 frozen vegan pizzas, whether it be their own brand one or Goodfellas or Chicago Town. So it's then really justifying why they should have us in. Sometimes I use the analogy of Ben and Jerry's. Think about ice cream before Ben and Jerry's, and then what Ben and Jerry's did. And they came in and it was ice cream, but it was different. And they had a great brand story, and they focused on the founders, and it was fun, but educational. And that's what we're trying to be, really. Is you think about, it's a vegan Ben and Jerry's in the frozen pizza sector, right. But it's very tough, and it's getting tougher because at the moment, all of the supermarkets in the UK, it's probably the same in America, they're sort of battening down the hatches at the moment because people are reducing their spend on food. They tend to be down trading in terms of the quality and the price of their food. Frozen and pizza is a little bit recession resistant, right? And there's some research which shows as people, the money in people's pocket gets tight, they tend to eat out less and eat in a bit more. Okay. And so sometimes that has a positive impact on things like frozen pizza and other frozen meals. So it swings and roundabouts, but it's definitely very challenging, trying to get that space in the frozen aisle.
Right. Do you guys see online building a lot for you guys and starting to move more distribution through,
it did. Yeah, in 2 ways, really. We set up our own direct-to-consumer D2C website service just before COVID hit, 2.5 years ago. And it was big for us during COVID. It really helped our D2C grow. We were sending out packs of 4 or 5 frozen pizzas in very eco-friendly insulated cardboard boxes. And we're getting up to several hundred pizzas a week that we were sending out. It's certainly quietened off since the shops reopened and people were happy and more comfortable, going direct and purchasing. Right. But the other area where online is growing now, of course, is in the speedy grocers. So we have companies like Get Here and Gorillas over here in the UK and Europe who are growing very fast. You probably have similar brands over there where you've got an app and you order and they'll deliver your grocers within 10, 15 minutes. What sort of companies do you have over there, Shane?
I mean, a lot of the companies that are doing that too, like the bigger ones, are almost going like direct and creating their own apps.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah. So it's almost a challenge to the traditional supermarket model.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know, America or Canada, they've probably all got 2 or 3 companies that are doing that now. Meant to be the fastest growing retail sector in the world, and massive growth, big investment gone into them. And our brand, our frozen pizza brand, fits in well with some of those guys because they tend to get younger, more metropolitan type people using the app. And that's more our sector, I guess, in terms of the vegan frozen pizza market.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think with you guys, and I mean, with all small businesses like that, I think, our advantage is, online now, and that's not just selling. I think if you get smart at, I've always been really good at operating the back end of businesses and even online and building communities and building those niche markets and building those tribes and bringing people in. And I think that's the advantage that we have against the bigger boys, because, I really think business has changed a lot since, I got in even 20 years ago, and to the fact where people are more, they're more adopt to do relate. They want to know who they're buying from. They want to know the face. They would rather be like, okay, like, okay, oh, and you're vegan. I know the owner's vegan. Like, when people find out, for example, I'm vegan and we want to do business, they choose, and they're vegan, they choose me before somebody else all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I think, but I also see small businesses don't take enough time on the back end and set that up operational properly to build those strong communities. And they don't have the right processes and systems, and maybe don't even really know how to do it at times, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's
I think you're right. The brand story is incredibly important. On all our pizza boxes, we have a picture of myself and my son.
Yeah, I like that.
From a social media point of view, and it's not for egotistical reasons. It's just that we know people are really interested in the fact that it's a father-son business.
Totally.
So they're happy to see our picture. A lot of our social media posts, we use LinkedIn a lot for a business networking point of view, and do a lot of personal stuff about why we're in business and why we set up One Planet Pizza. And they're usually the strongest posts, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram. And the other really interesting thing is, similar to you, I thought it was really important to build a community at the start, and we ended up getting to 10, 20, now 34,000 followers on Instagram. I think over 50,000 across all of our channels. That's about 5 times bigger than most of the big multinational pizza companies in the UK. So we've got an incredibly strong following. Not all of them are buying our pizzas.
Right.
A lot of them can't access the pizzas.
Yeah.
Some of them are over in America or countries that they can't even get the pizzas, but they still like the brand and the story and as you say, the tribe and the community that we're building around it.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting because I come from, well, building traditional businesses and stuff, but also building online and internet businesses and stuff. And I see that, a lot of times people say nowadays, well, email marketing is dead, but it's interesting because my group and everybody were around those databases. And if you still do email marketing properly, it is very, very lucrative and very, 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 very important, and keeps your people tight, your true buyers, your true customers, your true advocates, your true. And so, it's interesting because I always say I always ask a business, what's your email marketing strategy? Right. And a lot of them don't have it. And I said, you're just missing a lot out there, a lot on that right now, so it's
I think so. Yeah, we spent quite a long time on our D2C working out the customer journey and what they should go for, from coming to our site and then routing it down. They come to our site, they don't purchase, they come to our site, do purchase. What do we do once they purchase? And we've got that quite nicely established now through test and trial, and I think it works reasonably well. But you just need to keep it fresh all the time, don't you? Because the market is changing so quickly. And what we found on our D2C pizza offering is that the business starts going downhill as soon as we stop doing something new and innovative. And for us, that tends to be either a new product, a new pizza-based product, or collaborations with brands that are much bigger than us. We bring their toppings and put them on our pizza, share the social media, and that always gives us a real lift. And we have to now we program that in once every month, pretty much, just so there's something new every month for people to buy.
Right. You guys, with all your stuff, I mean, that pizza, I think you got a father and son team doing some kind of a cooking show, and then you're making the pizzas and stuff like that. And just, I think there's something around there. You guys should do a mascot. If I had your guys' business, I would do a mascot. And a mascot.
What's a mascot?
I'm trying to think what's another word I can put it that's a term we use in Canada and America. So mascots like Ronald McDonald, like a mascot, or a bear.
I do know, but we have them at football clubs.
Yeah. What do you call? Do you call them mascots, or do you guys call them?
Yeah. I didn't realize you were talking about mascots. Usually they're sort of bunnies or gorillas or something like that.
Yeah, I think you guys with a mascot would be super cool. I think that it plays heavily to the TikTok platform. So you could scale that platform and it becomes a fun thing with your product. The mascot could go into schools and talk about, you guys could be talking about vegan pizzas and stuff like that. But I think a mascot for you guys just goes hand in hand with the brand and will give you the separation and plays super well to the TikTok and to all the platforms. I would, if I had your business, I would do that in a second.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll pass that on to my marketing manager.
Yeah. You guys will do good that way. So cool. So what? How does the operations run for you guys? Where are the pizzas made? How does all that? How does all that happen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're based in Norwich, which is about an hour and 45 northeast of London, out in eastern region of England. We're both born and bred in Norwich. At the moment, we've got our office here. We've got 4 or 5 people based in the head office. We've got our own production unit. There's about 8 people based in the production unit.
Right.
And we make about 1,000 to 1,500 pizzas a day, which is sounds like a lot, but compared to a big pizza production place, it's what they may do in an hour, I guess,
right,
probably.
Right.
But yeah, so at the moment, that's how we're doing it. And we've got distributors. We manage the distribution direct in the UK, and then we work with distribution partners in countries like France and Holland, Spain and Sweden, and obviously Iceland, and
Right.
they tend to represent our brands in those countries.
Got it. What's the biggest challenge trying to deal with other countries, or do you have that? Is there not too many challenges?
I'd say, I mean, Brexit obviously hasn't helped us. I'm sure you guys have, know that we broke away from the EU, and because of the sort of Brexit that we ended up with, the paperwork of getting something, even a plant-based pizza, which is relatively low risk because it hasn't got any meat and dairy in, the paperwork and associated costs have increased significantly to export from the UK.
Right.
So one of the things we are looking at is setting up a production centre based in the EU, in Holland or Germany, because that's where our markets are growing fastest, and it could be a lot easier to take the product and produce it over there rather than try and export it from the UK.
Right.
I guess the other challenge is understanding that each country has got different preferences in terms of their flavors. It's incredible how it changes. So in Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, for example, frozen pizza is massive, but they tend to go for some flavors, like a kebab pizza is one of the most popular flavors in Sweden. Down in our country, the most popular flavor is a 3-cheese margarita that we make. But in a lot of European countries, the most popular pizza is a pepperoni, or pepperoni as we call it. So it's really important, I think, when we launch into another country, that we're just aware of what works and doesn't work. The Med Veg, we've got a roasted Mediterranean vegetable pizza, works very well in the UK. You try and take that down to Spain or Italy, anywhere around the Mediterranean, it just doesn't work.
Right.
So yeah, you've got to be aware of how the flavors change between different countries, and also their buying patterns. There are quite often big differences. Take Holland, for example. Holland has an incredible number of small supermarkets near to where people live. So in Amsterdam, you're always only 5 minutes away from walking to a supermarket. And that means that those supermarkets tend to have less frozen space, less frozen products, because everyone goes out and shops every day. You go up to Sweden and people have to travel, an hour or two to get to the supermarket, and therefore they're going to do a weekly or a monthly shop, and they'll buy more frozen products. Right. So each country is really interesting how it's different, and not just the types of flavors of pizzas they want, but also their shopping habits and how much they buy into frozen, and what products they buy frozen, what they prefer chilled and fresh.
That's interesting. So any plans to expand to North America and Canada?
Yeah, we about a year or two ago, we sent some of our pizzas over to a plant-based distributor in New York. Right. And they trialed them in a couple of specialty grocers, organic type plant-based shops, and they went down pretty well. We just couldn't make the commercials work. So I think that's a classic example where within a year, perhaps when we do our next investment round, expansion into North America, maybe on the scene. We know we've got followers over there. We've had Americans that have come over and tried our pizzas at festivals and things here. So we think there's an opportunity. There's a few plant-based brands in North America at the moment, but nothing quite similar to us. I think we'd have to. The way I'd like to do it would be to find a partner in North America to produce the pizzas to our standards, our specifications, but do it locally. I think that would be much better than trying to ship them over in frozen containers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So did you guys do a couple raises, or did you bootstrap everything out?
Yeah, we did. I mean, very early on, it was interesting before we set the business, before the business actually sold any pizzas, we did a very small crowdfunding raise in the UK. Which we were actually the first plant-based company to do equity crowdfunding in Europe.
Oh, really?
Back in 2015, 2016. Since then, we've had a couple of rounds where we've had some angels come on board and a couple of plant-based investment funds.
Right.
One of which is UK based and one of which is based in Sweden.
Okay.
So now we've got a nice mixture, and we did another crowdfunding raise actually back in January. So we've got about, through one of the crowdfunding companies here, we've got about 300 micro investors through the crowdfunding, and then we've got about another half dozen angel, combination of individuals, angel investors, but also a couple of plant-based funds who have invested.
Right. Awesome. You find that was a big challenge for you, finding the right people and getting the raise?
Yeah. I mean, the last one was particularly difficult because we're just coming out of COVID and going into the Ukraine war and cost of living, etc. So that's certainly changed the investment climate.
Right.
People are becoming much more conservative, worried where they put their money. Obviously, stocks and shares generally are all over the place. So sometimes, even if the plant-based food sector is still growing, the investors who would have invested in us are suffering because their money is, if their stocks and shares portfolio has gone down by 20-25% in the last 6 months or whatever. So it is very challenging. And I guess because some plant-based products have got real intellectual property, they've got something that's proprietary where they've invented something new. It's difficult to do that with pizzas. At the end of the day, the base is quite traditional. The passata is vegan anyway. So it's for us, it's more about the brand and the story,
right,
rather than the IP that we've got in our pizzas. But I think that does make it, if you come up with some IP that is revolutionizing, I don't know, artificial leather made from banana skins or something, then that's a little bit more attractive than perhaps a pizza company where it's more about the brand and the marketing.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, you guys have done well. So
thank you.
Yeah, good job. Not an easy thing to do, and a lot of moving components. So good job. Hats off to you, and so needed. It's so neat. We don't have a lot of in our supermarkets. I mean, we have some, but I've tried a few of the vegan pizzas out here, and they just haven't been able to quite hit it on some of them yet.
We need to get some of ours over, Shane.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. We need that here. I'm always looking, I'm trying it all, right? Because I'm like, it was close, but it was just, there was just like, just when it's just not there.
Yeah.
Like it just is not there.
Sometimes it's probably just down to the cheese more than anything, because it's quite good to get, the base and the toppings, etc. Especially if it's a vegetable topping anyway.
Right.
But even if I go to Italy, I was over in France doing some biking recently, went to a pizza place and just tasked them to hold the cheese, and it was a lovely pizza. And in Italy, there is a pizza called the Mariana, that is a cheeseless pizza. And they've been serving it in northern Italy for decades now. So, pizza doesn't always have to have cheese. If you have a very good base sauce, some vegetable toppings with some nice olive oil, perhaps some chili oil, and I think you can go without the cheese sometimes. But if we're really going to appeal to the flexitarian market, then we can't ask them to go, plant-based and cheeseless. It's got to be one step at a time, hasn't it?
Yeah, totally, right. Amazing. So, I mean, there's people that watch us from all over and from your country in different places. So where can they find your product at, and your website, social media, and anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So website is easy, oneplanetpizza.com. You can buy the pizzas on the website. In the UK at the moment, we're in about 70 Asda stores. So people in the UK can go on our website and see which stores we're in. If they're around London, then Whole Foods. If they're vegan, they may know about the Vegan Kind, which is the biggest online vegan supermarket in the UK. And we've been on there for many, many years now. So quite a lot of places in the UK. And also, if you go to our website, if you're in a European country, you can go on there, and our retailers in each of the out of UK countries is listed on that website as well. the social media tags are all One Planet Pizza on Instagram and TikTok, etc. So yeah, just search for One Planet Pizza and you'll find us.
Awesome. So everybody go check them out, try their pizzas. You know, they're doing good work. And, you know, when you want to try and get into Canada, maybe we can help you guys pull our connections and.
Excellent. That would be great.
Yeah, I know a lot of people at the Whole Foods and different places here and stuff. And maybe we'll go put some of them in there and then go check them out and they don't beep out and be like, hey, here's this brand. You guys should deal with this brand.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. So everybody, thank you so much. This has been a great interview, a wealth of information. And thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, Shane. Great to talk to you.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.